What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, the console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 37. Hope you guys are all doing well out there and had a fantastic weekend. Maybe watched a little college football, maybe played some video games. I know that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm recording on the Friday afternoon, on a gloomy Friday afternoon, I must say, because I'm looking out the window here. It's man, the rain is here. Fall is finally upon us. Goodbye, summer. I shall miss you. Now, I want to thank you guys all for tuning in last week. And it's kind of been a crazy week. A little bit of news, a little bit of interesting things have been happening, and some fun things to talk to. I think we have a jam-packed episode this week. So hold on to your butts. It's going to be a good one. And I do want to say this right at the top. Thank you guys for helping the show surpass 300 downloads. I put out a tweet a couple days ago because we were in like the 290, like we just hit like 290 or something like that on the downloads. And I really wanted to, hit 300. So I said, hey, share the show with your friends. Let's try to hit that milestone and see if we can, before I record the next episode, if we can hit 300 downloads. And we smashed that like right away. And a couple of you out there retweeted it and showed some support on social media. So thank you guys for that. That is absolutely awesome, and I really do appreciate that. And again, I know it's not anything that's this huge crazy milestone that other podcasts would highlight and call out, but for me in my little show here, in my little corner of the internet, as I always like to kind of call it, that's big, and I'm stoked on it. So you gotta call it the wins, and that's all to you. Thanks to you guys, those dedicated folks I have out there, which I really do appreciate that. So thank you guys for helping us achieve that milestone. Now, remember, for those that are new to the show, as I know some of you are, the best way you can support the show is to leave us a nice rating on the podcast platform that you're listening on. It helps us get into the algorithms. I always love it if you leave me comments. So head over to YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gamecite. You can leave comments on the podcast episode over there. Get you, that's the way you can write in the show, or hit me up on Twitter @Gamecite Podcast. And remember to catch new episodes of the show each and every week on Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, for this week's show, I was originally going to talk about this concept of crunch in video games, and specifically because it's this, there's this seemingly never-ending quest mostly by media journos to villainize developers over this, let's be honest, kind of rather undefined term. And I kind of wanted to dive into that, but I'm going to save that for another week because there's actually been some interesting pieces of news that have come out around Xbox. So yes, yet again, we're going to talk about Xbox that I really feel like we kind of need to talk about it and bring it up on the show, because as I've stated in the past, I am a skeptic on the Game Pass effect on the industry. So some tidbits there that we'll dive into. A couple other smaller news items that I also want to touch on is a new trailer for Redfall dropped. So we'll touch on that real briefly. There's apparently a Witcher remake in the works over at CG Projekt, so we'll touch on that. And there's been a lot of buzz around the new Modern Warfare 2 campaign, and so I want to touch on that as well. Now, before we get into any of that and the games that we're playing, I actually want to do something new and introduce a new regular segment to the show that we'll probably do every month or so. We'll have it come up, and that's recent game pickups. And so I used to talk about, back in my YouTube days, doing unboxings and stuff like that. It was fun to do that. But one of my favorite YouTubers, Happy Console Gamer, he does a series where he talks about, new games that he picks up and new video game related things that he picks up. And I've always really enjoyed watching those episodes, and I've always kind of wanted to do the same because I too am, well, not to the same degree, a video game collector, but I do like to buy physical games. I like to, get good deals on games and add those to the collection and just kind of have them, as well as, you all know, I'm a big fan of amiibos, so anytime new amiibos come out, I got to get those. Add that you can you'll see in the background of this video. That I'm a big amiibo fan, so we got to talk about those. So I'm actually recording video for this episode, which I don't normally do, but I want to cut this out and put it up as its own YouTube video as a clip of the podcast and kind of share this and create kind of a new segment for the podcast, but as well as kind of a new kind of YouTube video that you can go check out and we can kind of have on a regular basis for recent game pickups that we do. So I'm going to try it out. I've done a couple of these in YouTube short format, but shorts are limited to 60 seconds. And I've realized I'm a talker, which is why I wanted to get into podcasting about video games because I love talking about video games. And 60 seconds is not enough for me to go through recent games that I've picked up and kind of talk about them. Because that's the whole point, is to be able to talk about the games you picked up and why you picked them up and your interest in them. So that's what we're going to do here on this segment of the show. And like I said, I'm recording video currently. I don't know if I'll ever get into video format of the podcast episodes itself. Maybe I'll dive into that at some point. But I don't know. One of the things I really wanted to make sure when I started this podcast was that it doesn't become too much. And it was one of the things when I used to do YouTube is that, creating videos and then editing them and trying not to look like a complete amateur at it. I wanted to make sure it didn't become too much of a job and it was still fun to do. So I don't know how much, if we'll get into video at some point, but at least for these segments, I do want to record video so then we can also upload these and I can show you the games and we can have it on YouTube. So let's get into that, shall we? So I've got quite a few games here that I've recently picked up. And I'll start with a couple of these PlayStation ones. And I think this is towards the end of summer, Best Buy had like these 10 days where they would have a new game that was $10 every day. And I picked up a couple of those. One of them was Call of Duty Vanguard, which I showed up on the last, I guess, YouTube Shorts version of this segment. But a couple others I haven't had a chance to talk to yet. So the first game I've recently picked up is The Evil Dead. And I got this on the PlayStation 5. It was $10 during that Best Buy deals day. And this is that asymmetrical game. I've heard it's awesome, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to pick it up and just to try it out. I watched some gameplay of it when it came out earlier this year. It seemed like a lot of people were having fun with it and really enjoyed it. And so for $10, I was like, why not try this game out and see if it's something you might just have fun and hop into. Now, I'll be honest, I have no context or I'm not an Evil Dead fan. I don't even think I've seen the movies. I know of it. I just never really got into the movies in that regard. So I don't really know too much about this franchise, but the game seemed fun. So I thought for $10, why not jump into it, And then another game I picked up during those Best Buy deal days was Destroy All Humans, the remaster for PlayStation 4. And it's a game I never played back during the 360 PS3 days. It's a game I always wanted to try because it seemed fun. And now that they did the remaster and for $10, I was like, I've got to pick this up. It's a no-brainer. I think one of the things that interests me about this game still to this day is that it's in that single AA space where we just don't get a lot of games like that anymore. It's either, kind of in the indie category or it's, a big AAA style game. And so I've heard this game is really fun. I've heard great things about it. It's very kind of goofy in that sense. And I think there's a space for single A style games and they're fun. So that's why I picked this one up. It'll be in the backlog for who knows how long, but I'd like to get to it at some point. And then I've already talked about this one last week on the podcast, but just came out recently, Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. I picked this up on the PlayStation. I got the physical version. I like having physical games. And I'll keep doing that until, that's really no longer an option. But this game is awesome. I love it. I've been playing it the past week or so. It's absolutely fantastic. And well, I'll talk a little bit about more in it to, the what we've been playing section, but it's I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan, so it was a no-brainer. I've been kind of looking forward to it ever since it was announced because I love the idea of the concepts of the 4v1 kind of asymmetrical style. So had to get it, and it's good. I'm enjoying it. Now, next, I've got quite a few Switch games to get to. Another one I've talked about on the show, but Splatoon 3, obviously, had to pick this. I'm a huge Splatoon fan, have been since the original on the Wii U. Yes, the Wii U. And so, obviously, I was looking forward to Splatoon 3. I haven't played it here recently too much, and I haven't played through the campaign, but I definitely want to do that. It's on the list. But the multiplayer is still as much fun as it's always been. And Salmon Run, the co-op mode, is fantastic. I have to say. I love the Salmon Run. And then it's funny, actually. This next one I picked up just because I wanted the physical version of it, and that is Bayonetta on Switch, the original Bayonetta. Now, this was previously really only a digital version, like a digital only game. And it came out, the 360 PS3 era. I never played it back then. And I think at some point in the last couple of years, they've given it away for free on the 360 on Games with Gold, which, obviously I have that. But my first experience with Bayonetta is actually when it came to the Switch with the Bayonetta 2 version. So, because you can see here, includes the first full game download. And so that's when I finally decided to try out these games, is when I got Bayonetta 2 on the Switch and I played through both of them. And they're awesome. Let me tell you, these games are freaking awesome. And I remember when Bayonetta 2 first came out on the Wii U, and it was getting like 10 out of 10 scores. And I was like, wow, maybe I should try this game. And that Christmas, I think later that year, I remember getting a copy of Bayonetta 2 on the Wii U. I still have it. It's still sealed because I never did eventually get to it. So that'll probably be worth some money someday. But then they ported it to the Switch, which I was super excited for. So I had to get on the Switch, played through it, and I understand why it was getting like 10 out of 10 scores, because it's so good. Like it's just so fun to play. The combat is super stylish. It's really fluid. It's a lot of fun. The boss battles are fantastic. It's this really grand scale. And then obviously the characters are great. The story is really interesting. And it's just a great package. Like it's just awesome. And it's almost got that like campiness to it, that, and I don't even know if that's the right term for it, but it's kind of a little bit out there, kind of doesn't take itself too seriously, I don't think. But it's just a joy and a lot of fun to play. So, anyways, back to Bayonetta. Because I love these games so much, and previously this game was only available digitally on, with the Switch, and Bayonetta 2 is a Nintendo exclusive. Same with Bayonetta 3. I figured, well, now that they're doing the first game digitally or physically, I mean, why not pick it up? It was $30, I think, and there's, I think, only a limited number of these that they're actually making and selling. So I thought, let's get it, let's add it to the collection, so that way I have Bayonetta 1, Bayonetta 2, and then what comes out today is Bayonetta 3. Today being the time of this recording. And actually, right before I hopped on to record the show, what comes in the mail? Bayonetta 3. So I just got my copy of Bayonetta 3. So that's another recent game I've just picked up, is Bayonetta 3. And I am super looking forward to this game. Review scores have been pretty great. I'm excited to jump into it. I don't know if I'll get to it right away this upcoming weekend. But certainly before the next episode of the show, I should be diving into it and have some thoughts to share on this game. Man, I'm excited. This has been a long time coming too, because I think this was announced, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Long time coming. I mean, the early Nintendo Switch days, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a good one. I'm very, very excited. And hopefully it's a return to form for Platinum Games, because like their recent games like Babylon's Fall, that just ain't cutting it, bro. So yeah, very excited about this one. And now I've got all three of them. Bayonetta 1, 2, and 3. That's freaking awesome. All physical, all on the Switch. That's dope. And then the last thing I wanted to share in terms of recent pickups is the Monster Hunter Sunbreak amiibos. So I finally was able to get the The Palamute amiibo. I haven't opened it yet. I usually do open my amiibos, except for a few super rare ones. But I got the Palamute and the Palico amiibos. These were unfortunately GameStop exclusives. But the weird thing is when Sunbreak originally came out earlier this year, what was it? The end of June, beginning of July, that in the United States, these weren't available. The Palamute and Palico Monster Hunter Sunbreak amiibos. You could only get the Mozamo, or I forget the name of this one, but you could only get this one with the collector's edition. So I thought that was the only way I'm going to get this amiibo. So I got the collector's edition, and it's a really awesome looking amiibo. But this is the only one you could get in the States for a while. And I think it was they must have had some production or shipping issues to get these amiibos in the States, because in other places you could get these other amiibos along with this one, but we had to wait. And then I think it was beginning of September, they finally released these. So I was able to snag them, and now I've got all three of them. And I have the original Monster Hunter Rise amiibos as well, of course. I mean, you can see, I love amiibos. I've got just about every single one of them they've ever come out in the US. So I was super excited about these, and I'm really looking forward to those Splatoon 3 amiibos coming out very, very soon. So that's all I've got for recent pickups, and hopefully you guys will like this new series. Let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. And since I'm plugging myself here, this will go up on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and be sure to check out the podcast. So with that out of the way, let's finally get into the games that we're playing. And I'm going to take a sip of my energy drink here. It's pretty good. I have to say, I got this. My wife did, actually. It's the Alani energy drink, and it's called Witch's Brew. It's like a Halloween flavor, and it's basically caramel apple. It's fantastic, I have to say. And you do genuinely get that taste of caramel apple. It's quite wonderful, I must say. Anyways, let's talk about the games that we're playing. And remember to write in to let me know what games you've been playing, just like our friend Samathan James did over on YouTube. And he says, I've been playing Warhammer 3 on PC a lot lately, but for console specifically, I've been playing A Plague Tale Requiem. It's really beautiful and an emotional game so far, and perfect for when I just want to lean back and enjoy the ride. And that's awesome, Samathan. I know that game came out here in the last 2 weeks, I think, by the time this goes up. It seems like a lot of people are really enjoying it. It's something I want to get to at some point, but there's just so many other games out there that I really want to play and dive into that I'm not going to be able to get to that game right away, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. I know it's up on Game Pass, so for Game Pass subscribers out there, you can jump into it. It comes with your subscription, and it seems like they've got a pretty good game on their hands based on what I've seen from review scores and what, the sentiment around the game online. So awesome. Let me know, Samathan, how you're liking the game so far. And I agree, man. Sometimes you just want to fire up a game and kick back on the couch and just enjoy it. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy console gaming. It's perfect for that. Get your big TV, get your couch or your chair, you just kind of kick back, got the controller in your hand, and you just relax. Like that's how I relax. So awesome. Thank you for writing in, Samathan. Really do appreciate that. For me, I've been playing really 2 games, actually 3 games. I just started one last night. But mostly been playing Cyberpunk 2077. I'm now about, I think, 32, 33 hours in. I've really only been doing side quests. Like, as of lately, I've just been doing side quests. I've been so lost in the world of side quests. And there's a couple of these side quests like storylines that have really captivated me. Two of which I thought were really, really freaking awesome. And I'm not going to get spoiler or anything, but I'll briefly describe them for those that may know the game or are kind of interested. One was basically a kidnapping investigation where I helped this cop um, look into this kidnapping, and you kind of it gets pretty dark. I'll leave it at that. But that one was really, really pretty cool and really captivated me. And then the other one, it was helping this politician look into like some strange happenings. Like they had this event happen in their apartment, and he wanted me to investigate it. And it's pretty wild. Let me put it that way. It was no spoilers, but it was pretty wild. So some pretty cool stuff. And I was just super enamored with it. So I've just been so lost in side quests. I've also been trying to romance Panam, that character in the game. I mean, she's kind of a hottie, so why wouldn't I? So I've been working on those quests, helping her out, doing her stuff, and I'll get back to the main story. But I've just been so, just really enjoying the side quest content. It's actually really great. So, yeah, I'll get back to the main story though. But there's some games that have come out, as we saw with Bayonetta 3, that are going to derail me from this game. Now, I do have to say I did have a couple more bugs come up. So one, I did have the game just straight up freeze on me, and I like totally frozen. I had to close it, restart it during a mission. That was kind of annoying. Luckily, it saved like right before that, so I was super thankful for that. And then I had this other bug. It's just kind of funny that I really want to share it. But I had this bug where I called my motorcycle over, and it was driving towards me, and then all of a sudden it just fell underneath the map, and it's still driving, but it fell underneath the map, and I'm just watching my motorcycle fall away underneath the map because I can see its little marker and just get farther and farther away, and it was gone. That was it. Goodbye, motorcycle. See ya. It was just hilarious, like absolutely hilarious. I was able to call it back, but later. But I just super random. So this game still got some bugs in there, some quirks, but overall, I have been enjoying my experience with Cyberpunk, and it's a pretty good game, I have to say. Now, I've also played a little bit more Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. Played a few more matches kind of here and there. I think I just hit level 35, I believe it is. And I still want to continue to play more. I do kind of feel like I'm peaking at this game a little bit. But I'll continue to play it, a few matches here, a few matches there, because it is just it's a lot of fun. I do want to reach at least level 50 at some point, if I can, or if I don't get bored before then. But been playing more of that. One thing I do want to say is that this game does need some more content, and I really hope they've got a roadmap for this game in terms of content, maybe some seasonal stuff to do to kind of keep players coming back. But I think one thing the game needs the most is more game modes, because it's just the one you either play as the ghost or the Ghostbusters and capture the ghost. That's the game essentially. But I think they could really steal from the other good Ghostbusters game, Ghostbusters the video game, which came all the way back out in 2009. They did a remaster in 2019, I think. But that game is fantastic, by the way. Has all the original actors, the original Ghostbusters doing voice acting. Awesome game. But that game had a multiplayer component that I absolutely loved and played the crap out of back in the day. And some of those game modes I really feel like they could steal and bring into this game. And I know it kind of throws off the whole asymmetrical component, but like one of the game modes they had in that game was basically surviving waves of ghosts. So you could totally do that as Ghostbusters, just fight waves of ghosts, capture them. It'd be perfect. Just totally perfect. And I think that would be a ton of fun. Let it be, 5 different waves of ghosts, varying difficulty in terms of them scaring citizens, or difficulty in catching them and stuff like that. And you got to hunt them down. Like that would be awesome. I love that idea where it's just you're kind of surviving in different waves. It spices up the formula just a little bit. Another one is so you can capture the most ghosts. And that one was really fun because one of the mechanics in the Ghostbusters, the video game, was you could slam ghosts, like kind of low level ghosts into your trap. So you grab them and then you just like do this move where you just slam them down into the trap. And I like that idea too. So you compete against your teammates to see who can capture the most ghosts. And so that could be really fun too. It adds a little competition to it. You're playing as the Ghostbusters. There's tons of different ghosts around. Maybe there's, they've got the minions in the game. Maybe there's a bunch of those, and you just who can get the most ghosts. Why not do something like that? So I really hope they have some additional content, some additional plans for this game, because I think they have something here that fans like myself have gotten into and really enjoy. But we need something more. And again, I understand it would potentially throw off the asymmetrical multiplayer portion of it, but there's also co-op. Co-op is a big portion of this game, and I really think you could lean into that a little bit more. So that's all I got on Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. And then, as we discussed earlier, Bayonetta 3, I just got that in the mail. I do plan to play that. That's on my list. But I just dove into last night and played a little bit this morning when I woke up, that game, Signalis, that just came out. Came out at the time of this recording yesterday. So October 27th is when it came out. And this is that almost PS1 era survival horror game that it's an indie game, and it's on, I think, all platforms, but it is on Game Pass. And so I decided to just play it there because it's like I have Game Pass. Haven't really used it really lately, so why not play it there and get some use out of my subscription? And I've only played no more than an hour and a half of the game. And it's interesting. It's very, very interesting. And it's such a love letter to Silent Hill and Resident Evil, especially because it's just like those games were back in the PlayStation 1, like to the T almost. In terms of, it's got modern controls and movement, but you the camera angle, the way you pick up notes, the way there's a lot of puzzles in the game. Like you need to go get this you'll unlock this safe, for example, and so you have to kind of figure out, how do I get the code? And that's kind of buried in different messages and things that you find around in the level. And it just really reminds me of that old school survival horror games, well, like with Resident Evil and Silent Hill. It's captured that to a T. And I've just started encountering like enemies very reminiscent of Resident Evil 1. And I'm excited to play more of it. I heard it's only like 6 or so hours. At least that's what one of the reviewers had said when I was looking around online. So that's perfect in my opinion. That's one of the reasons I was like, okay, so I can jump into this, probably knock it out, play through it before I jump into Bayonetta 3. That's my plan, at least. So that's what I'm doing here. Again, I'm super early on in the game. It is very weird. I have no idea what's going on because there's a lot of kind of almost subliminal messaging that kind of pops up and happens, but it's very eerie. It's kind of got that perfect survival horror atmosphere, and I'm excited to explore more of it. So I have been enjoying that. I jumped into it, and I'm excited to play through more of it and report on next week. So now let's jump into a few of those news items that I mentioned at the top there. First is a new Redfall trailer. So Bethesda dropped a new trailer for Redfall, showing a little bit of the game's kind of spooky side, just in time for Halloween, of course. It's only a minute 45 seconds long, but it shows various encounters with the vampires in the game that you'll no doubtably come across. To be honest, it's not really anything super special, and it's not going to like knock your socks off or anything like that, but I still think it looks cool. I'm super stoked for this game. Like, I cannot wait to play this game. I'm very, very excited. We still they have that 2023 release window. But again, assuming Xbox holds on to that, the whole next 12 months thing from their showcase that they did, then we should get it in the first half of 2023. Now, I was kind of thinking about this. I don't think Bethesda would want this game to come out before Starfield, because that game's, or I'm sorry, after Starfield, I should say, because Starfield is going to hog all the attention, all the hype. So presumably it comes out before. And I'm kind of thinking, because Starfield is touted as Xbox flagship game, right? That's the game that's got all the hype. That's what everyone's talking about. That's what everyone wants. So I kind of thinking April seems like a nice slot, because January and February are already super packed with tons of games. And I'd assume you'd want to avoid Zelda, like Zelda's just the plague, because that game is going to hog all the attention. It's We saw that with Horizon Zero Dawn back in 2017 when it came out right around Zelda time, and even the next Horizon game with Elden Ring, it kind of got overshadowed. So I assume you want to avoid Zelda at all costs. So fitting it in around kind of that April timeframe seems plausible. I think it seems kind of like maybe like a good fit for it. I do think this game does also kind of fit into the June timeframe as well. It was previously touted as a summer release, so maybe that's the case too. But again, it seems like maybe you want to get it out before Starfield. I don't know. Let me know what you think. But that's kind of where my mind's at. But again, it looks awesome. The enemies look great in this game. I can't wait to play it. I think this game is going to be awesome. And it seems like a game I think you can play cooperatively. Obviously, that's a big focus with the 4 different characters, being able to play it with your friends. But I also think you can play it single player as well, which that's how I plan to play it. So yeah, Redfall, man, go check out that new trailer. I think it looks great. I really hope we get a release date soon, just because I'm freaking excited for this one, man. Very excited. Now, next up in the news is there's apparently a Witcher 1 remake in the works, which I think is crazy. Crazy to think about. So, Video Games Chronicle reported that CG Projekt is remaking The Witcher in Unreal Engine 5. And I wanted to read part of the article here because it had some interesting tidbits. So, let me pull that up here if I can find it. Here it is. So the article says, quote, according to the company, the remake will be rebuilt from the ground up in Unreal Engine 5 and is currently in early stages of development at the Polish studio's Fool's Theory, where veteran Witcher series staff are involved. CG Projekt Red is providing full creative supervision, it said. It's been confirmed that the remake is the same title as was announced earlier this month as Canis Majoris, which I guess I totally missed that because I thought this was brand new. The article goes on to say, quote, it's still early and we want to ensure that the game is created with the utmost care and attention to detail. Therefore, while we're excited to share the news with you, we also want to ask for your patience, as it will be a while until we start talking about this project in detail, the company said on Wednesday, end quote. So I think it's pretty obvious that it's going to be a while before this. And my initial reaction on this was like, okay, that's cool, because I know the game came out. I think it's only on PC. I don't think it ever came to console. So presumably we'd be able to get this and play it on console. And it came out back in 2007, I believe. That's what I have here in my notes when I looked it up. And so I remember looking at the gameplay, watching some Twitch gameplay of it. It seems pretty dated. So it would be nice to kind of get this game modern. Unreal Engine 5 is phenomenal. So it'll be a gorgeous looking game, no doubt. And given the success of Witcher 3 and the popularity of this franchise with the show and all that on Netflix, to me, it's just no brainer. This totally makes sense. Get it on all the platforms so they can enjoy kind of the original first entry of this game. Yeah, no brainer. Let's do it. I'm on board. But my only concern is like, this is yet another project from CG Projekt, and after all those other Witcher games that they're working on, the new trilogy, that separate Witcher game, presumably Witcher 4 or whatever, and then the Cyberpunk sequel, it's like, are you guys like spreading yourselves a little too thin? Now, I know in the article it says it's another studio, CG Project's kind of overseeing it, so it's not really a lot of their resources per se, but I don't know. It seems like they've got a lot going on. There's a lot to manage on the CG Project side, and I guess I'm a little skeptical after what they did with Cyberpunk, and that was only presumably they had another project in the works, but like Cyberpunk was the main focus, another project, and I don't know. It seems like they have a lot of stuff going on, and hopefully they can deliver on that. We'll see what time it tells. But overall, I see it's exciting because then, more people are going to get to experience this first entry into this now beloved franchise. And it's probably going to look awesome. So, again, though, we're not going to see this for years. I I would say nothing until like 2025, probably at the earliest. So now, let's talk about Modern Warfare 2. There's been a lot of buzz about this campaign. And I wanted to touch on this briefly because I find it really interesting. And so apparently, this year, if you pre-ordered the digital version of the game, you get access to the campaign 1 week early, which was this past week. So the game, at the time of this recording, I think the full game comes out today, October 28th. And last week, so this entire week plus the weekend before, you could play the campaign if you pre-ordered the digital version of it, which is kind of cool. I think this is fantastic. It's a great idea because it gives the campaign time to shine before people jump into the multiplayer. And for those that kind of get the game and kind of feel this pressure to jump into the multiplayer right away so they're not missing anything, they don't have to worry about that. And so it lets them kind of jump into the campaign, take their time with it a week before multiplayer, and then go try hard and sweat your ass out in the multiplayer portion. So I think this is a great idea. I'm surprised they haven't done anything like this sooner. And over on opencritic.com, the top critic average is 74, and the scores are kind of all over the place. So let me bring that up here. If I can get this to work for me. Where is it? Did I close it? That's embarrassing. I totally did. That's stupid. All right, give me a second. We're going to do this real time. Open Critic. Modern Warfare 2. I had this pulled up, but I guess I closed the tab. Okay. So I said 74. It's now sitting at a 76. And so a couple of the top media outlets, there's their scores here, and it's just really interesting. So IGN gave it a 6 out of 10. Metro Game Central 7 out of 10. GameSpot 8 out of 10. VG 24/7 4 out of 5, or an 8 out of 10. IGN Middle East 8.5 out of 10. Dual Shockers 7 out of 10. So, I mean, it's all kind of sitting anywhere between 6 and 8. So, so good but not great, maybe is a way to look at that. But the sentiment I've seen on social media says otherwise. Like they're saying this is one of the best campaigns to date, and it's fantastic. And even friend of the show who we've had on here, Legend of Cotton, he texted me and said that I have to play this. Like he loved it so much, and he knows my taste in video games. He's like, dude, you got to play this. You'll love it. And so I'm super intrigued now. I am very, very intrigued by this game because I enjoy the Call of Duty campaigns. Now, I haven't really played a Call of Duty campaign since, well, I played Black Ops Cold War. What was this? A year and a half ago when that came out on the PS5. So that's the last one I've played. But before that, I skipped a couple Call of Duties. And before that, I'd skipped a couple Call of Duties. So I've kind of only been every couple of years jumped into Call of Duty and played through the campaigns. But now that this one, it picks up after the Modern Warfare reboot that came out in 2019, but apparently both of these campaigns are really good. And so now I'm like, okay, I want to get the first game, play through that one, and then get this game and play through that one because there's just a lot of buzz around it. The problem is, I've been looking at prices at the original Modern Warfare, the 2019 one, and that game's just Modern Warfare, Call of Duty games just hold their value for some reason. And so I've been kind of keeping an eye on it because I want to pick it up. Though I haven't looked at digital. Maybe I gotta go digital on it, and maybe there's a better deal. Just get the digital version of the game. Just man up and get the digital version. So I don't know. I'm still poking around, but I do want to jump into this. But I just think it's fascinating that kind of the user sentiment seems to be like this is an awesome experience, but then the critics are kind of like, meh, kind of meddling a little bit. So it's really, really interesting. I did also hear, kind of on a side note, that now that the full game is launched, I'm seeing a lot of sentiment online that the UI is atrocious. So if you've experienced this terrible UI, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And I once I dive into at least the first Modern Warfare, and once Warzone 2 comes out, I do want to get Cotton back on the show. So if you're listening, buddy, look, this is for you. But I want to get him back on the show to talk about Call of Duty. We'll talk more about that and get his take on the game and the Warzone 2 specifically, because I know he's a big Warzone guy. So interesting stuff around Modern Warfare nonetheless. Now, 40 minutes or so into the show, let's get into the main topic. And that's about Xbox Game Pass and the never so quiet Phil Spencer. So there have been some statements from Phil Spencer about Game Pass that have kind of surfaced, been reported on from various outlets. And so I want to start with an article from VGC, one of my new favorite websites, because they do good stuff over there. And I want to kind of read a couple pieces from this to kind of set some precedent about what was said, and then we'll dive into and kind of dissect each pieces, because I think this is really interesting. And I know I've probably belabored this Game Pass conversation a lot on the podcast, but I think it's important. This is a big portion. When you can't talk about Xbox without talking about Game Pass. It's a big part of their strategy. It's a big impact to the industry, and it's very new. So with Xbox being one of the three major players in the console space, we got to talk about it. And I find this stuff kind of fascinating. So again, over at Video Games Chronicle, the article is titled "Xbox Game Pass Growth is Slowing Down on Console," claims Phil Spencer. So the article starts, quote, "Speaking at WSJ Tech Live, transcribed by The Verge journalist Tom Warren, Spencer said that while the company is seeing the PC version of Game Pass experience incredible growth, the console side of the business is starting to slow. Quote, I've seen growth slow down mainly because at some point you've reached everybody on console that wants to subscribe," end quote, he said. As of January 2022, Game Pass has over 25 million subscribers, according to Microsoft. The company recently claimed as part of the UK's investigation into its proposed Activision acquisition that it has an installed base of 63 million consoles. So people have multiple consoles. Interesting. Probably the X and S. The article goes on to say, quote, "In the same interview, Spencer claimed that Xbox Game Pass is 10 to 15% of its overall revenue and that the service is profitable for the company. Both Microsoft and PlayStation have in the past said that they don't believe subscriptions will ever be the dominant model in video games." And I apologize if I just burped, so I'm sorry. Let's see. The article goes on to say, quote, "Speaking during a web call on Tuesdays, transcribed by VGC, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella stated that Game Pass usage growth across all platforms driven by the strength of console. He said, quote, PC Game Pass subscriptions increased 159% year over year, and with cloud gaming, we're transforming how games are distributed, played, and viewed. More than 20 million people have used the service to stream games to date," end quote, of Satya. And then the article continues. It was reported earlier this month that the service generated around $2.9 billion in revenue just on console in 2021. End quote. So there's a lot to unpack here. A lot. And I want to start with this whole growth thing from Phil Spencer. And so he specifically says, "I've seen growth slow down mainly because at some point you've reached everybody on console that wants to subscribe." And I take a little umbrage with that statement. And maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that he believes that. Because I don't know, it just comes across as very non-businessman like. We know Phil Spencer he's a businessman, right? And they're all about making money, and I just don't feel like you talk about it in this manner. Again, I just don't believe that he actually believes that, because they haven't even really launched many, if at all, of their first party games. Their big first party games that they've been touting and talking about for years. They haven't even launched those yet. So you mean to tell me you believe everybody on consoles already subscribed that they want to subscribe? Like, you really feel like you've plateaued there? I No. I don't even think they've plateaued. And so if you take that into consideration, and then you also look at what they're doing with Project Keystone, which is that, basically being able to kind of plug in some sort of device or small box, as some have speculated on Phil Spencer's shelf recently, into your TV to have access to Xbox Game Pass and xCloud, play games that way, as well as what they've recently done with the new lineup of Samsung TVs, being able to, the Xbox Game Pass app is just right on there, and you can just stream games right away. Just grab a controller and boom, right on your TV. It's there. Don't need an Xbox at all. You mean to tell me those aren't other avenues to which you're looking to expand your Game Pass subscriptions with? And again, maybe I'm reading into it too not literal enough, because he says everybody on console that wants to subscribe. So maybe he's saying that maybe we've peaked on the literal console space, but we have these other avenues which we are exploring, like the TVs, like Project Keystone and PC, that we can continue to grow in those other avenues. So maybe that's what he means. We know Phil Spencer talks out of both sides of his mouth. He talks in riddles, he talks corporate speak. I get that. But I just really kind of took umbrage with this initial statement, because, kudos to what everything Xbox has accomplished with Game Pass, 25 million subscribers, and all that jazz. Really, without much support from first party games, like, you got to give them credit there. But we know once those big first part, like once Starfield hits, and then, once they continue to expand, in the TV space, as well as with whatever, if Project Keystone ever comes to light, that's going to give them additional market growth opportunities to be able to expand and increase their, Game Pass subscriber count. So, and reach a new audience to a certain degree. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is profitability, because this is a big one, because he says, and has said, that Game Pass is 10 to 15% of its revenue, and that the service, now it's not quoted here, but he says the service is profitable for the company. So he insinuated or specifically claimed, actually, according to Tom Warren here on his tweet, which is here in the article, he says, and it's profitable for us. So Phil Spencer has officially confirmed that Xbox Game Pass is profitable. And that's kind of been the big argument against Game Pass, is that it's not profitable. That's been the main argument for folks for quite some time. And so I guess to a certain degree, you can kind of squash that piece and say, well, it's profitable now, so you can't really argue that. But for me, I still have a lot of questions on the cost and in how it's profitable, because Xbox has never really been forthcoming in terms of how it works, how the payouts work, and how they're able to make money, or how they're counting how they make money. And I think that's what's missing here. So, I mean, they can say they're profitable all they want, but until we kind of know how this works, I don't know. I'm not a firm believer just yet. And maybe some people will call this goalpost moving. I can see that to a certain degree, but I don't feel like we have all the data here. And we know businesses can kind of fluff the numbers or position themselves in certain lights and stuff like that. And we know Phil Spencer, he's not always a truth forthcoming man, if you will. So I kind of feel like you have to take some of this stuff with a grain of salt to a certain degree. Now, one of the things we've always kind of, when we talk about Game Pass, is that it's the Netflix of gaming, right? It's, and I was, I think, like a lot of people, you make that comparisons, and I've always kind of been curious on Netflix and how they make money. And it's no secret that for years Netflix was operating in the red. And I looked this up. So Netflix originally started in 1997, and they didn't post their first profit until 2003. And I think it's kind of been up and down since. And so I guess on those timelines, Xbox Game Pass is kind of along that same timeline to be able to post a profit. So, I mean, that lines up. But I came across this article from Forbes that kind of gives insight into their current financial position. And I think it's really interesting. So I'm going to read a little bit of this article here. We're going to get a little nerdy, very technical. And I'll preface that I am by no means a financial analyst or financial expert. But I find this stuff fascinating, and I think it's an important perspective to maintain. So the article, it's from 2020, so early in May 1st, 2020 is when it was published. But I still think it's relevant, and provides some good context here. So the article is titled "Netflix One Question: Is it losing money or making money?" So the article starts, quote, Netflix stock has emerged a star performer through the coronavirus pandemic, rising by approximately 25% year to date as people consume more content while being confined to their homes. The company added close to 16 million subscribers over the first quarter, handily beating its guidance of about 7 million new subscribers. However, one key question investors are likely to have is whether Netflix is actually making money. The answer depends on whether you look at accounting profits or underlying cash flows. We answer this in our dashboard analysis. Part of the analysis is summarized below, and this is where we'll get to a couple of these points. Quote, viewed from the lens of net income, Netflix has been performing well, with its net profits growing 3 times from around 0.6 billion in 2017 to 1.9 billion in 2019. That said, the company has been burning cash, with free cash flows falling from negative 2 million in 2017 to negative 3.3 billion in 2019. The sizable difference between these two numbers is explained by how Netflix accounts for its content investments, amortizing, which is expensing, only a portion of its content each year on its income statement. The company's cash spending on content is growing fast, rising from about 9 billion in 2017 to 14.6 billion in 2019. In comparison, the amortization of content has been relatively lower, growing from $6.2 billion to $9.2 billion over the same period. Netflix says that about 90% of the value of a show is expensed within 4 years of its debut. I know that's a lot, but we still got a couple more here. Later in the article, they said, that said, 2020 could prove an interesting year for the company as content production is likely to slow down with the pandemic, potentially reducing its cash spending on content. While the company previously indicated that it could see a negative 2.5 billion in free cash flow for 2020, it now expects the number to be less than negative 1 billion. And I actually skipped a portion, so I apologize. This is an important part that I wanted to touch on. Quote, Netflix content outlays have been growing not just in absolute terms, but also in terms of content spending per active subscriber, and the company faces a paradox in a sense. While it needs to rein in content spending in the long run to boost cash flows, this could prove tricky as subscriber growth could slow or even decline if it doesn't keep up updating its library at the same pace, given the competition in streaming spaces like Disney, Apple, and the upcoming HBO Max vying to market share. End quote. So actually, I pretty much just read the entire article here, but I think it's fascinating stuff. And I know it's very technical. I know it get pretty nerdy with the numbers and stuff like that, but the key thing that I take away from it is the paradox. Well, actually, two things. So first is how Netflix is actually calculating their expenses through the amortization. So they're kind of calculating it over years, even though maybe they pay. So on their financials, it's this amortization cost that's done over time. So it's kind of a way for them to, I guess, almost look better than they actually are, depending on the perspective that you're looking at. And so the question from there is like, is, is Microsoft doing something similar to kind of position themselves as a certain way to kind of uh, look at costs and expenses and things like that? The other thing that I find interesting that I think is most important and very relative to Xbox Game Pass is the paradox that the article talks about, in the sense that finding that inflection point between spending and buying content for your service and growing and maintaining your subscriber count. Because if Netflix, and we've seen this play out earlier this year in 2022, where Netflix dropped like a record number of subscribers, I think right after or right before Stranger Things or something happened. I can't remember, but it was early this year. But to where Netflix, if they don't continue to spend money and consistently bring lots of content to keep their customers subscribed and grow subscriptions, that they could lose subscriptions and not maintain their current subscriber count or even grow. And it's this catch 22 that they find themselves in. That's the paradox. And so I feel this is absolutely relevant when we talk about Game Pass, because Game Pass is inevitably paying lots of money to get games and content to the subscription service, and with the intent to maintain and grow their subscriber base, right? That's the whole point. And we see that every month Game Pass is bringing new games to the service. I mean, just this month, heck, just now, I'm prime example. I'm playing Signalis, which just came out on Game Pass. Not only is it's a day and date release on Game Pass, but it's brand new to the service. And so now I'm finally getting some use out of my subscription, and I can play the game. There was also Scorn earlier this year, and then last month, Plague Tale Requiem's on there. Last month, I know they had a slew of games. Persona 5 Royal just came out, so lots of big games are coming out on the service, and we know that costs them a lot of money. And that's, I feel like, the thing that's missing. And so I was trying to do some research as I take a drink of my beverage here into how much does Xbox actually pay, because that's kind of this black box in the equation for a game to get on Game Pass. And the only thing I could find, if I can get to the article here it is. It's from twistedvoxel.com, which I've never been to their website, but the article is titled, "Here's How Much Xbox Paid to Bring an Indie Title to Game Pass." And so I want to read, I know I'm reading lots of articles this episode, but it's important. So I'm going to read part of this article here. So the article starts, quote, "Microsoft paid an indie studio a major sum of money in order to add its game to the Xbox Game Pass library. It seems to have turned out to be a very good deal for said studio. The game in question is Cooking Simulator. Originally released on Steam back in 2019, the game will now be added to the Xbox Game Pass catalog. In its report, developer Big Cheese Studio has revealed the exact amount of money it received from Microsoft in return for putting the game on its service. The software giant made a one-time payment of $600,000 to Cooking Simulator creators in order to include the game on Game Pass. Big Cheese Studio got a terrific bargain because the sum received from Microsoft is about equal to 22% of its revenue from the previous fiscal year. After Cooking Simulator is added to the Game Pass library, any subscribers to the service will have access to the game. Given that the game's audience has significantly diminished since its debut, according to SteamDB statistics, that is unlikely to have a detrimental effect on the title's sales. Currently, the game's 24-hour player peak is around 300 players. More than 700,000 copies of Cooking Simulator have been sold overall, Big Cheese Studio revealed. Additionally, the studio has sold over 400,000 copies of various add-ons. So presumably they can sell more add-ons now being on Game Pass and take a huge chunk of change, which is just over 1/5 of their revenue from the previous year. So that's a big win for a game that's not really selling any more copies anymore. And so I bring this up because from what I could see, it's the only example where we have like a concrete number of what's being paid to bring games to Game Pass. And the game, Cooking Simulator, I mean, that's not really a mainstream game. It's a game that's certainly found an audience, and simulator games always do kind of have, fans, and they reach a certain number of people. But I imagine that this has got to be on the lower end of the spectrum when you talk about the price Xbox and Microsoft is paying to bring these games to the service. Because let's be honest, Cooking Simulator isn't a marketable game to really draw in people. It's a nice little added benefit to the service, but it's not going to bring people in. And it's not, the big AAA games that they're bringing over, like Outriders last year, or even the Assassin's Creed games with Origins and Odyssey, from with Ubisoft, as well as, we just talked about it, Persona 5 Royal. That's huge. So you have to imagine bringing those games cost them, I don't know, 5-10 times more. I'm just guessing. I'm totally guessing. This is pure speculation here. But looking at a game like Cooking Simulator, I think you have to imagine that's on the lower end. And then when we compare that to a game like Persona 5 Royal, which is a big AAA game and is crazily being marketed on the Xbox side, a lot of people are that game is being pushed heavily. It's a big win, right? It's a big win to bring that game to Game Pass. And so that has got to cost them a lot more money. We're talking, I imagine, tens of millions of dollars. So that's a lot of money. And then you think about all of the games on Game Pass. I mean, I don't know how many games are on Game Pass right now. I tried to look it up. I can't get a concrete number. I know it's over 100. I don't know if it's more than 200, but for the sake of this argument, let's just say it's around 200. And it's constantly changing. You have games coming and leaving the service every month. So you take, I don't know, minimum 600,000 to, we don't know what the max is, but let's say on average a couple million per game. And every month you're adding 10 or so games. So, that's a lot of money over the course of a month and months and years that you're paying for this service. And that doesn't include other costs such as, marketing, such as, server management, cloud management, all this other stuff. It gets very complex, but it's just a lot of money. And this is not even including their big first party games, because those haven't started to pour in. Once they do, so let's take a game like Starfield. You have to imagine that costs, I would, well more than $100 million. I mean, this is a big AAA game. They've been working on this for years. I wouldn't be surprised if it was over $200 million. So let's, you have to take that cost now, because they're not selling. I mean, the game will be sold separately. It's an Xbox PC game. It'll be sold separately, but I don't know how many copies they'll sell. I know they'll sell them. They'll get some sales for the kind of hardcore Bethesda fans, and I have to imagine Bethesda is notorious for this. They're going to have a collector's edition for the game, so they'll sell, that version. But that's not going to be the main focus of this game. It's going to be all about Game Pass. The intention to bring that game to Game Pass is to boost subscriber numbers. So, given that I don't know how else they're going to monetize this game, all the cost to make that game is now poured into the costs of Game Pass. And that's going to happen with all of Xbox's first party studios. Is all of those costs to make those games get poured into Game Pass, because they're there to make content for Game Pass. So the cost to make all of those games gets brought into there, plus whatever they're bringing and paying for from other, second and third party games. That's a lot of money. And again, back to the Netflix thing, that's the inflection point that they have to maintain. The cost of creating content and adding content to the service, with the inflection of maintaining and increasing your subscriber base. What's that happy medium? That's a big task. And that kind of puts them in a hawk. That puts them in a kind of a rock and a hard place when it comes to finding that balance between that. And so that's when we talk about profitability, like, good for you on being profitable, but can they maintain that inflection point, especially as they start to pour in those first party games? So I find this stuff really interesting, as you can probably tell. Now, also in the article, hopefully, just knocked my microphone a little bit. Also in the article, it states that both Xbox and PlayStation have said on record they don't believe that subscriptions will be the dominant force in the industry. So what does that leave? That leaves sales and microtransactions, right? So my question is this: if Game Pass is only 10 to 15% of the revenue for Xbox, why is it their only focus? Because the conversation from consumers, or anytime Xbox is brought up, Game Pass is right there with it. Game Pass is Xbox. That's now I know for that's just the main topic of conversation. And so, but that's only 10 to 15% of your business. So I guess I don't understand the focus. And because Xbox doesn't care about sales. We've talked about that, at least seemingly, right? And they're buying up competition, Activision Blizzard, hello. And they're pushing the prices of games down via their subscription service, or at least that's the intent. So my question is, like, what's the end goal here? I just feel like it's kind of something to think about, you know? Now, I bring up this entire conversation around Xbox, not only because I find it fascinating, but even though they've done a lot of great things, I think again, you have to give them credit with very little first and second party support and exclusivity. They've accomplished, I think, quite a bit with Game Pass. So you have to give them credit there. And while I think it's great for them to have achieved seeming profitability with the Game Pass model, we know the fanboys out there are having a heyday with this. My concerns for Game Pass and its impact on the industry still stand, because I still worry about this perception shift in consumers and gamers of game price value. And that, it seems like there's a lot of people who don't really want to, pay money for video games. And I understand with inflation and the recession and all that stuff, it's money's tight. I understand that. I completely understand that. But still, if people aren't willing to pay for games and are expecting basically for Big Daddy Microsoft and Phil Spencer to come in and make it more affordable, and I put more affordable in quotes, then how's that going to impact everybody else and developers? Because if people aren't willing to pay full price for video games, then developers have to look at that and say, okay, how do we make money elsewhere? Microtransactions, battle passes, stuff like that. And then if you can't inject those types of things into the games that you're making, they have to shift the types of games that they're making into, more multiplayer focused games or even free to play. And do we then see a race to the bottom like we saw on mobile, where everything is just a heaping giant pile of garbage? On top of that, we know the subscription services like PlayStation Plus and Game Pass specifically are a form of curation services, because not every game makes it onto Game Pass. And so if your game doesn't make it to Game Pass, I mean, and that's the main focus within the industry, like, good luck selling your game. It's tough out there, especially with the shitty current state of all of the game stores, like especially Nintendo and PlayStation. My God, their stores, you can't find shit, especially on Nintendo, man. What the hell are you doing, Nintendo? You guys got to fix your shit. Seriously. But all of that, I think, then raises the barrier of entry for developers as well to get their games out there. So I just find this very concerning. And those are my concerns. And that's why I want to bring up the conversation consistently, especially when we have new information and new interesting things to talk about as it relates to Game Pass and Xbox. And I'm a longtime Xbox fan. The 360 era, that was my main jam. I played almost exclusively on Xbox. And I've been a gold subscriber since well over a decade now. Even longer than that, I think. So I've been with them for a long time. However, my loyalty has shifted back over to PlayStation primarily. That's where I mostly play now. So that said, I think this is very interesting. I hope you guys have found some of this information interesting, kind of get your heads thinking a little bit. I would love to hear from you guys. So let me know down in the comments below what you think about all this. And that'll do it for this week's episode. I feel like a lot. It's only just over an hour long, but man, this has been a lot. Like, I'm going to take another drink here because I feel like I just spilled a lot of information out and probably talking really fast. And yeah, but very interesting time here in video game world. But that'll do it. It's getting late. I'm starving. I have to say I did not eat lunch today and I'm absolutely hungry, so I need to go find some food. And I think I'm going to jump back into Signalist tonight. I definitely want to get through that game. And then I've got Bayonetta 3 here waiting for me after that. So lots to play, lots to look forward to. Thank you all for your love, kindness, and support out there. Remember to leave us kind reviews on the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow me on Twitter at Gamecite Podcaster. Appreciate all that support and share it with your friends. If you have some friends, some gamer friends that'd be interested in the show, send them our way. Let them download it or check it out on YouTube. That would be very much appreciated. Hope you guys are all doing well out there. Stay safe. Play lots of video games. Talk to you next week. Until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.